The day started like any other. Ethan Hayes was walking through Central Park with his AirPods and skimming through emails on his phone and sipping a half-finished coffee that had long gone cold. Billionaire problems, they'd say. But no one really knew how lonely his success felt. No wife, no kids, no one waiting at home. Just a 10,000-square-foot penthouse filled with silence and polished stone. He came to the park to clear his mind, though his assistant warned it wasn't wise for someone as well-known as him to roam without security. Still, he preferred moments like this unseen, unbothered, and almost human. Then he heard laughter. Not just any laughter. It was bright, musical, and somehow familiar. He turned his head. Under an old oak tree, two little girls, identical twins no older than 6, were playing with paper crowns. They had the kind of joy that made the whole world seem softer. But it wasn't just their laughter that struck Ethan. It was their faces. He stepped closer. Same freckled cheeks. Same almond-shaped eyes. Same gap between their front teeth. No, it couldn't be. His heart thudded. They looked exactly like her. Emily Carter, his childhood best friend. The only girl who saw through the broken boy hiding behind his drunk father and empty fridge. The girl who used to draw stars on his notebook margins and said he'd be famous one day. The girl who kissed him once at 17 and then disappeared the summer after graduation. He hadn't seen her in 20 years. But these girls, these living, breathing echoes, were a perfect copy of the face he remembered. He sat on the nearest bench, stunned. Lily, don't eat the flower, one of the girls giggled. I'm not. I'm smelling it with my tongue, the other replied. He smiled. He couldn't help it. It had been years since anything made him smile like that. Then he saw the woman walking toward them. Young, maybe mid-20s, wearing scrubs, probably their nanny. She called out, "Girls, time to go home." Ethan rose and walked casually toward them. He crouched gently beside the girls. "Hey there," he said warmly. "You two look like princesses." "Thank you," they chirped together. He smiled. "What's your name?" "I'm Lily," said one. "I'm June," said the other. "Those are beautiful names," Ethan said. "And what's your mommy's name?" They looked at each other, then back at him. "Emily," they said together. Ethan's breath caught. He turned to the nanny. "Emily Carter?" She looked startled. "Yes, do you know her?" He didn't answer. His voice came out low. "Where is she?" "She's at home. She's been sick, but I need her address," he said, trying to keep calm. "I'm sorry, sir, but I can't." He reached into his coat, pulled out a business card, and handed it to her. "Tell her Ethan Hayes stopped by. She'll remember. And tell her I need to see her." He turned away before the tears could form. The girls kept laughing, oblivious. As he walked back to his car, Ethan felt something heavy shift in his chest. Like a door he'd locked years ago had just swung open. Inside, the driver asked, "Home, sir?" Ethan looked out the window. "No," he said. "Take me to the hospital. I want every top oncologist in the state on the phone within the hour." The driver glanced at him in the rear view. "Is everything all right, Mr. Hayes?" Ethan's voice was steady, but his hands wouldn't stop shaking. "No," he whispered, "but I'm going to fix it." Rain tapped gently against the windshield as Ethan's black SUV pulled up outside a small, weathered house on the edge of the city. The place looked like it had stories to tell, stories carved into porch wood, hidden behind cracked bricks, and tucked under the sagging roofline. This was Emily's home. Ethan stepped out slowly, tugging the hood of his coat over his head. The air smelled like wet leaves and faded dreams. This wasn't the kind of place he expected to find someone like Emily Carter. Not the girl he remembered. Not the girl who once told him he could be anything. His hand hesitated at the door. He raised it to knock. The sound was soft, almost uncertain. A few seconds passed. Then footsteps. Then coughing. The door creaked open. There she stood. Emily. She looked different, but not lost. Pale, yes. Thinner. Her cheeks were sunken and her frame looked tired. But her eyes were still Emily. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "Ethan?" she said, like she didn't trust herself to believe it. He nodded. "Hi, Em." She stared at him. Then, quietly, she stepped aside. "Come in." The inside of the house was small, but clean. Worn furniture. A soft blanket thrown over a sunken couch. Toys scattered near a rug. On the wall, pictures, drawings. Stick figures labeled Lily, June, and Mommy. Emily followed his eyes. They love to draw, especially when I'm too tired to get up. He turned to her. Why didn't you tell me? Emily sighed and sank into the couch slowly, like her bones were heavier than they should be. Tell you what? That I got sick? That I disappeared? That I gave birth to twin girls and raised them alone? All of it, he said quietly. She looked away. Because you were gone, Ethan. Your life took off like a rocket. Mine crashed. And I didn't want to be the weight that pulled you down. He sat across from her. You should have let me decide that. Silence stretched between them. Then Ethan said, I saw them. In the park. Lily and June. They look just like you. I thought I was seeing ghosts. A sad smile touched her lips. They're my miracle. The only reason I kept fighting as long as I have. What's wrong, Emily? He asked. His voice was gentle, but urgent. She hesitated, then whispered, Stage for breast cancer. It spread. The doctor said 6 months. That was 8 months ago. Ethan's face hardened. You're not alone anymore. I'm going to help you. I can get you the best care anywhere. Just say the word. I can't let you do that, she said. It's too late. No, he said firmly. It's never too late. Not if there's a chance. Not if it means your daughters don't lose their mother. Tears brimmed in her eyes. She looked so tired of pretending to be strong, tired of holding everything alone. They don't know I'm dying, she said softly. They think I'm just a little sick. How do I tell 2 6-year-olds that Mommy might not wake up one day? Ethan stood. He walked to the window, watching raindrops race down the glass. Then he turned back to her. You don't have to tell them. Not yet. Let me help you fight first. And if I lose? She asked. Then you lose knowing someone tried everything. He said. That someone still loved you enough to try. Her breath caught. She looked at him for a long time. I thought you forgot me, she whispered. I never did, he replied. Not once. She closed her eyes, as if his words poured sunlight over an old wound. And outside, for the first time in hours, the rain began to clear. Ethan couldn't sleep. He sat in his penthouse. City lights blinking outside the glass walls, but all he could see was Emily's fragile smile. Her voice, her house, her confession, it haunted him. She was dying, and she hadn't told a soul. She had raised 2 girls alone and fought to stay alive quietly, while he moved on. That night, Ethan made a decision. By sunrise, he was in a black rental car, driving away from the city. He didn't bring security. Didn't tell his assistant. No meetings. No boardrooms. Just one mission. Go back to where it all began. Home. The small town in upstate New York hadn't changed much. The streets were still lined with trees shedding their autumn leaves. The gas station still had the same crooked sign. And Emily's old neighborhood looked like time had simply paused. He pulled up in front of the Carter house. It looked tired. The white paint had faded to gray. The front porch sagged a little, and the fence leaned like it had given up. But the tree in the yard, their tree, still stood tall. The one they carved their initials into in 8th grade. He knocked on the front door. After a moment, an older man opened it. Can I help you? Yes, Ethan said. I'm looking for anything that belonged to Emily Carter. I knew her a long time ago. The man narrowed his eyes. Wait, are you Ethan Hayes? Ethan gave a polite nod. Yeah. The man stepped back slightly. Well, I'm just watching the place. Emily's parents passed, and the house has been empty for years. But there's old stuff still in the attic. Ethan's heart skipped. May I? The man hesitated, then waved him in. Sure. Bring a flashlight. It gets dark up there. The attic was exactly as he remembered. Creaky floorboards, cobwebs in corners, and a tiny window with a cracked pane. But buried in the dust were memories. He sifted through boxes, school notebooks, a broken music box, a photo of Emily at age 16, grinning wide in a blue dress. His fingers trembled as he dug deeper until he found it, a small shoebox labeled, Letters Never Sent. His throat tightened. He sat cross-legged on the attic floor and lifted the lid. The first envelope had his name written on it in faded blue ink. To Ethan. Hands shaking, he opened it and began to read. Dear Ethan, if you're reading this, I guess part of me always hoped you'd come back. I didn't disappear because I stopped caring. I disappeared because I thought you deserved someone whole. I wasn't whole. Not after what happened. Not after I found out I was pregnant. I didn't know how to tell you. I was scared. My parents were furious. They sent me away. I had the babies alone. I worked nights and cried during the day. I told myself you were better off not knowing, but there hasn't been a single day I didn't think of you. Love from Emily. Ethan closed his eyes. There were more letters, dozens, each one raw, each one more painful than the last. They told the story of a girl abandoned by her family, rejected by the world, but still in love with a boy who never stopped chasing dreams. A boy who became a man and never looked back. Until now. Ethan gathered the letters gently. He stood, brushing dust from his jacket. As he walked back down the attic stairs, something shifted inside him. A sense of purpose, of urgency, of guilt, and something deeper. He had walked away from the past for too long. Now, he was walking back in eyes open, heart wide. And this time, he wasn't leaving her behind. Emily's house was quiet. The kind of quiet that wrapped around your ribs and made it hard to breathe. Ethan stepped through the door carrying 2 grocery bags, fresh fruit, medicine, and small gifts for the girls. He'd stopped by a boutique to get the matching purple headbands. The clerk had asked, birthday? He'd smiled and replied, no, just hope. Inside, the lights were off. The living room was dim, and a blanket was half draped over the couch. He could hear the soft ticking of the wall clock and the muffled hum of a dishwasher. Then he heard coughing. He followed the sound down the hallway to Emily's room. The door was ajar. She was sitting on the floor beside her bed, clutching her chest, her face pale and slick with sweat. Emily! Ethan rushed to her side, dropping everything. Hey, I've got you. She tried to speak, but couldn't. Her breathing was short and panicked. He wrapped his arms around her. Just breathe, okay? I'm right here. You're okay. He helped her sit up slowly and fetched a glass of water. Her hands trembled as she drank. I didn't want the girls to see. She whispered. They're still at school, he said softly. It's okay. Her eyes, glassy and exhausted, looked up at him. I'm getting worse. Ethan didn't deny it. He couldn't. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a thick folder. These are treatment plans. Specialists, clinical trials. I had a team review your files last night. I told you. I know what you told me. He cut in gently. But I'm not leaving you to die in this house, Emily. Not when there's still a chance. She looked away. He lowered his voice. I read your letters. Her head turned quickly, shocked. In the attic, he said, I found them. Silence. Tears filled her eyes. I didn't mean for you to. I'm glad I did, he said, because it told me the truth. You've carried everything alone. But you don't have to anymore. I'm tired, Ethan, she said through tears. I'm so tired. He reached for her hand. Then let me carry you for a while. She let her fingers rest in his. The room fell still. Then she asked, do you believe in second chances? He nodded. Only every day since I lost you. Emily's chin trembled. I don't want to leave them. I don't want them to wake up one morning and... You won't, he said, his voice firm. Not without a fight. She stared at him. Promise me something. Anything. If I don't make it, don't let them forget me. Ethan's throat tightened. They'll never forget you. Because they'll know how much you were loved. He stood and helped her onto the bed, tucking her in gently like she used to do for the girls. As he turned to leave, she whispered, Ethan? He looked back. If I had told you then, if I hadn't run, do you think? He stepped closer. I would have married you. She closed her eyes, a tear rolling down her cheek. Outside, the wind stirred through the trees. But inside, something unspoken passed between them. A quiet deal with time. She would fight, and he would never stop fighting for her. Ethan had never made pancakes before. Not once. The billionaire CEO had sat through 1,000 boardroom brunches, tasted the finest pastries in Paris, and had a private chef who could whip up a 5-star meal in his sleep. But here he was now, standing in Emily's tiny kitchen at 7:12 a.m., staring down a battered non-stick pan and a half-used bag of pancake mix with the intensity of a man preparing for war. A tiny voice behind him giggled. "You're doing it wrong," Lily said, seated at the wobbly kitchen table, her headband slightly crooked and her legs swinging beneath her pink pajamas. "I'm doing it exactly how the instructions say," Ethan replied, flipping the pancake awkwardly. It landed half off the pan and half on the stove. "Well, mostly." June, sitting beside her twin, burst into laughter. "Mommy flips it with one hand." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Then your mommy is clearly a wizard. She says love is the secret ingredient," Lily added seriously. "Ah," Ethan said, nodding. "That's what I forgot." The girls grinned at each other. It had been 3 days since Emily agreed to start treatment. She was still recovering from a difficult night, and Ethan had insisted she rest while he handled the morning routine. He thought he'd quietly drop off breakfast and leave, but the twins had other plans. And strangely, he didn't want to leave. Not yet. There was something deeply unfamiliar and deeply grounding about this chaos. Toys on the floor, crayons scattered across the table, sippy cups that leaked, sticky fingers tugging at his sleeve. In the haze of luxury cars and high-rise towers, Ethan had forgotten what it meant to just be there for someone. A loud thump interrupted his thoughts. He turned quickly. Lily had fallen off her chair. She blinked, startled but unhurt. Then she looked at him with wide eyes and whispered, "Are you going to tell Mommy I fell?" Ethan knelt beside her, checking her elbow. "No, but only if you promise not to climb the chair like a ninja again." She giggled. "Deal." He helped her back up and returned to the stove. The pancakes were now slightly burned, but at least golden. He served them with syrup and sat across the girls. They munched happily, and he watched them, marveling at the fact that these little humans existed because of the girl he once kissed behind a tree after school. June paused mid-bite. "Are you Mommy's friend?" He smiled. "Yes." "Like boyfriend-friend?" He choked on his coffee. "Whoa. That's a big question for this early." Lily leaned in. "You like her?" Ethan paused. His smile softened. "I loved her a long time ago. Do you love her now?" June asked, swinging her spoon like a wand. He looked at them. Their faces were so open, innocent, curious. "I think I never stopped," he answered truthfully. The room fell quiet. Then Lily said softly, "Mommy cries sometimes. When she thinks we're asleep." Ethan's heart ached. He reached across the table, his voice steady. "Then we have to make sure she knows she's not alone anymore." The girls nodded solemnly. It was that moment, right there, that changed something in Ethan. He didn't fully realize it yet, but the shift had already begun. It wasn't just about helping Emily survive anymore. It was about giving those girls what they'd never had: safety, stability, a future, and maybe, just maybe, a father. Later that morning, after cleaning syrup off the table and brushing tangled curls from 2 squirmy heads, Ethan helped the girls into their tiny jackets. June insisted on wearing mismatched socks because they have personality, and Lily brought a rock in the garden, claiming it was her lucky pocket stone. He loaded them gently into Emily's rusted sedan. "Are you sure you want to take them?" Emily's voice was faint behind him as she leaned against the doorway in a sweater too thin for the season. "I'm not kidnapping them," Ethan said, closing the back door. "It's just school drop-off. You need rest." Her face was pale, her arms folded tight across her chest like they were the only things holding her up. "I don't like them being away from me," she whispered. "I understand," he said, stepping closer, "but you're running on fumes. Please let me do this." After a long pause, she nodded. He glanced back at her as he drove off. She stood there in the doorway, arms folded, hair pulled back, trying not to look like a woman who was slowly fading. He drove in silence for a while. Then Lily broke it. "Are you rich?" Ethan blinked. What makes you ask?" "You smell like new things," she replied. "Seriously," June chimed in from the back seat. "And your shoes are very clean." He chuckled. "Yes, I guess I am. Mommy said money doesn't make someone kind. June added, "She's right," Ethan said, "but it can help kind people do big things." They reached the school, a modest public building with peeling blue paint and a cheerful mural that had seen better days. The girls ran to their classroom after waving, and he stood by the fence for a while, watching them blend in with the sea of backpacks and ponytails. Then, unexpectedly, something twisted in his chest. He didn't want to leave them there. He wanted to protect them, be near them, not as a visitor, not as a helper, but as something more. His phone buzzed. It was his assistant, Mr. Hayes. "The press is asking where you are. The board rescheduled the call twice already. Shall I tell them you're out of the country?" He stared at the screen for a long second, then typed, "Tell them I'm handling something more important. Postpone again." And for the first time in years, he didn't care if stock prices dipped or articles speculated. The world could wait. His world was changing. Back at Emily's house, she was asleep on the couch, her breathing shallow but peaceful. Ethan didn't wake her. Instead, he wandered around the living room. Children's books stacked on a side table. A cracked photo frame with a picture of Emily holding the girls as babies, laughing despite the exhaustion in her eyes. A drawing on the wall showed the three of them standing under a rainbow, stick figures with hearts for hands. He found himself staring at it too long. Then his eyes landed on a pile of unopened mail on a side table. Most of it was bills, overdue notices, medical letters, a hospital invoice circled in red. He flipped through them, heart sinking lower with each one. How had she been holding all this on her own? Ethan sat down and ran a hand through his hair. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel powerful. He felt helpless. Until an idea came to him. That afternoon, he picked the girls up from school. This time, Emily came too. She didn't want to. At first said she didn't look presentable. But he coaxed her out with promises of staying in the car and just watching from the parking lot. The girls ran out of the school gate, yelling, "Mommy, Mommy." Emily cried softly, seeing them run toward her. It had been weeks since she had enough strength to walk that far, let alone meet them at pickup. Ethan stood behind her, silent, his hand gently on her back. Later, back home, while Emily napped again, Ethan sat the twins down at the kitchen table. He pulled out a sheet of paper. "Okay, ladies, I need your help." June perked up. "Is this a mission?" "Exactly," Ethan nodded. "Operation, make Mommy laugh." Lily clapped. "I'm in." They spent the next 2 hours drawing pictures, writing silly poems, cutting hearts from construction paper. Ethan wrote a short letter and let the girls draw sparkles and rainbows all over it. Then he made dinner actual edible spaghetti and helped them sneak into Emily's room to surprise her. She woke up to soft giggles and the smell of garlic. The girls jumped on the bed. Ethan stood at the door, watching. Emily opened the card, read the letter, and then laughed. It wasn't a loud laugh. It was soft and almost shaky. But it was real. "Thank you," she mouthed to him. He just smiled. Something in her eyes changed that night. Something in his did too. The next morning, Ethan arrived with a plan. It wasn't one of those polished presentations he was known for, the kind that closed billion-dollar deals or turned media heads. No, this plan came written in ballpoint pen on a napkin from the local diner. Emily stared at it, squinting. "You want to take us away for the weekend?" "Just 3 days," Ethan said, sitting across from her at the kitchen table. "Fresh air, better food, and rest. I have appointments. I already rescheduled them. Your oncologist approved." Emily raised an eyebrow. "You called my doctor?" "I called 6 of them," Ethan replied. "You're not just getting help anymore, Em. You're getting the best care in the country." She shook her head. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do," he interrupted gently. "You don't know how many times I've regretted not calling, not writing. I thought you left because you didn't want to be found. I didn't know you were hurting." Her eyes softened. "I didn't want to be someone's burden," she whispered. "You never were," Ethan said. "You were my anchor. I just didn't know how much until you were gone." Emily blinked fast and looked down. Her fingers traced the edge of the napkin slowly. "Where are you taking us?" "You'll see." 2 hours later, They arrived at a small lakeside cabin just outside the city. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean, warm, and quiet, surrounded by trees painted gold and red by fall. The lake shimmered under the sky like glass. Lily and June jumped out of the car before the engine even stopped. "Is this a vacation?" Lily screamed. "Does it have marshmallows?" June demanded. "It has both." Ethan grinned. Emily stepped out slowly, pulling her sweater close. The air smelled like pine and cinnamon. "Why here?" she asked softly. "Because it's peaceful," he replied. "And because I remembered you once said you want to see a sunrise over water." She looked at him, surprised. "That was high school. I remember," he said, "that night. After the girls fell asleep by the fireplace, surrounded by half-eaten Esmores and a mess of blankets, Ethan stepped onto the porch. Emily followed, wrapped in a thick throw. They stood side by side, watching stars blink awake across the sky. "You were always chasing light," Ethan said. "Even when we were kids." Emily leaned against the porch rail. "Maybe, or maybe I was just trying to outrun the dark." He looked at her. "You've always been brave." She scoffed. "Brave? I ran. I disappeared." "No, you survived. You protected your girls. You carried everything on your own. That's not cowardice, Em. That's strength." She went quiet. Then she asked, "What made you come back?" He hesitated. "When I saw those girls in the park," he said slowly, "it was like being hit by lightning. And I realized every success, every dollar, every win, it meant nothing without someone to share it with." He turned to her. "I don't want to go another year, another day, pretending like you don't matter to me." She looked at him then, and for the first time since he found her again, she let herself believe he meant it. The next day, Ethan made breakfast while the girls danced around to music from an old speaker. Emily sat at the table, sipping tea, smiling weakly but fully. "Can we do this every weekend?" Lily asked, her mouth full of toast. "Every weekend might be tricky," Ethan said, "but how about again soon?" "Tomorrow?" June grinned. Ethan laughed. "You're tough negotiators." After breakfast, they went for a walk around the lake. Emily moved slowly, arm in Ethan's, but she walked the whole way. The girls picked leaves and made nature crowns. Ethan watched them, and something inside him shifted again. He didn't want to just visit this life. He wanted to live it. That evening, while the girls painted rocks on the porch, Ethan sat with Emily on the steps. "Did they ask about their father?" he asked gently. Emily was quiet for a long moment. "I told them he was a hero," she said finally, "that he loved them but couldn't be here." "Is that true?" Her jaw clenched. "No." Ethan waited. "He was cruel, controlling. When I got pregnant, he called me a mistake and left. I was too ashamed to tell anyone. So I made up a story. Something noble. Something they could be proud of." Ethan placed a hand over hers. "They already have someone to be proud of. You." She nodded slowly, but her eyes shimmered. "I just don't want them growing up thinking they weren't wanted." "They won't," he said. "Not if I can help it." She looked up. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Ethan said, "I want to be there. For them. For you. I know it's sudden. I know it's messy. But I'm not going back to my old life and pretending this didn't happen. You're not their father, Ethan. I know, but I can be something," he said, "if you'll let me." Her eyes filled with tears again. "You already are," she whispered. The next morning, Emily woke up before everyone else. That hadn't happened in months. Usually, her body ached so badly it took 20 minutes just to sit up. But today, wrapped in the lake cabin silence, something felt lighter, not cured, not fixed, but different. She sat by the window, watching the sunrise. The sky changed slowly from gray to gold. Gentle waves lapped at the shore. And for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to whisper something she hadn't dared to believe in weeks. "Maybe I'm not done yet." Behind her, she heard soft footsteps. Ethan. His hair was a mess, his hoodie too big, and his eyes still carried sleep, but his face lit up when he saw her. "You're up early." She nodded, smiling. "Couldn't sleep, but it's a good thing today." He brought her tea. No words. No pressure. Just the small things that meant the most. They sat in silence for a while, just watching the lake. Do you remember senior year? She asked suddenly. That bonfire behind Miller's barn? Ethan chuckled, where the fire marshal showed up and half the school scattered. Yes, Emily laughed. And you tried to sing that awful love song from the radio because you thought I liked it. It had meaning, Ethan said defensively. It had auto-tune. They both laughed, and in that sound, the years between them crumbled. By mid-morning, the twins were up and begging for a lake adventure. So they packed snacks, water, sunscreen, and their imaginations. Ethan carried both girls on his back across a shallow stream, while they shrieked with laughter. They built fairy houses out of sticks. June claimed to find a unicorn footprint. Lily insisted that her rock could talk. Emily sat nearby on a blanket, watching all three of them with the quiet awe of someone witnessing a life she once thought she'd never have. At one point, June ran up and whispered something to Ethan. He laughed. I think you just proposed to me. Did she say, will you marry me again? Emily called out. June grinned. I said he should marry Mommy so we can all have pancakes forever. Ethan glanced at Emily and shrugged playfully. Hard to argue with that logic. Emily smiled but said nothing. Something fluttered in her chest, and she wasn't sure if it was fear or hope. That evening, as they packed up to leave the cabin, the girls fell asleep in the car within minutes. Emily leaned her head on the window, tired but glowing. Ethan drove in silence. You changed, she said suddenly. He glanced over. How so? You're softer, slower, lighter. I feel like I've finally stopped running, he said. Like, for the first time, I'm building something that actually matters. Emily looked at him. They adore you, you know. They saved me, he replied. I didn't know how empty I was until they filled the silence. She didn't speak for a moment. Then she asked, and what about me? Ethan slowed the car a little, the weight of her question settling between them. I loved you when I was 17, he said softly. But now, I see you, everything you've become, everything you've survived. And I'd be lying if I said I wasn't falling in love with that woman too. Emily looked down, her hands clasped tight in her lap. I don't want to be a burden. She said again. You're not, he said. You're the beginning of something. Back at the house, Ethan tucked the girls in. Lily mumbled in her sleep. Can we stay at the lake forever? He kissed her forehead gently. One day, he stepped into the hallway and found Emily standing there, her eyes glistening in the dim light. I saw my doctor's message, she said. You booked 3 consultations in Boston and 1 in Houston. Just options, he said. She hesitated. I don't know if I can handle the travel. I'll take care of everything. And the cost. Emily, he said, cutting her off. You're not an expense. You're my choice. Tears finally fell. She didn't say thank you. She didn't need to. Instead, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. For a long time, neither of them moved. Then she whispered, if I don't make it, I want you to tell them who I was. The real me, not the sick version, not the woman in bed, but the one who laughed at bonfires and danced in the kitchen. Ethan nodded, his voice thick. They'll know. I promise. Later that night, after everyone was asleep, Ethan stood alone in the hallway, staring at a family photo the girls had drawn on the wall. It showed 4 people now, not 3. Labeled underneath were the words, Mommy, Lily, June, Ifan. He smiled, even through tears. They had spelled his name wrong, but they had written him in. Emily sat at the kitchen table, staring at the photo Ethan had found buried under a pile of unpaid bills. It was a crumpled Polaroid, faded, sun-bleached. The image showed a younger version of her, exhausted, holding 2 tiny newborns wrapped in second-hand blankets. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but she was smiling. The man in the background, however, was not Ethan, and he was not smiling. He wasn't even looking at the camera, just standing with his arms folded, staring out the window. Ethan slid the photo across the table. This him? Emily didn't answer immediately. She rubbed her temples and whispered, yes. The silence that followed was heavy. I didn't want you to see that, she said. I thought I burned all the old pictures. Ethan sat across from her, eyes focused, calm but firm. Tell me everything. Emily exhaled. Her hands trembled slightly. She reached for a mug, but it was empty. I met him the summer after graduation. She began. I was heartbroken. You'd gone off to the city. I was lost. He was older, charming, had his own place. He made me feel seen. Ethan didn't interrupt. At first, it was good. He said all the right things. Then slowly, things changed. He'd disappear for days. Come back angry. Controlling. He hated when I went out. Hated when I talked to my friends. He said he wanted me to himself, because that's what love means. Her voice cracked. When I got pregnant, I was scared. I thought he'd change. But instead, he told me I ruined his life. Told me to get rid of the babies. When I refused, he left. Ethan clenched his jaw. Emily stared at the floor. I was 19. My parents kicked me out when they found out. I ended up in a shelter. I scrubbed toilets during the day and stocked groceries at night. I gave birth in a city clinic alone. She looked up. I don't regret them. Never. But I built a wall. Around them. Around me. To survive. Ethan was quiet for a long time. Then he asked, do the girls know anything? Emily shook her head quickly. No. I told them he was a soldier. That he died before they were born. I even made up a metal story. Ethan leaned back. Why? Her eyes were pleading. Because how you tell a child her father abandoned her? How do you make a 6-year-old understand cruelty? I wanted them to believe they came from something strong. Something heroic. He didn't respond. Emily continued, voice trembling. I know it's a lie, but it's a lie that gave them peace. A bedtime story that let them feel safe. Ethan looked at her, really looked. Not just a woman sitting in front of him, but the girl he once knew, the mother she had become, and the survivor who bore years of pain in silence. You did what you had to do. He said finally, you gave them strength when you had none left. Her eyes filled with tears. Do you think they'll hate me one day when they find out? No, he said, because they'll also find out who you really are. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He sat in the living room with a blanket draped around him, watching the ceiling fan spin. The photo of Emily and the twin sat on the table beside him. He couldn't stop thinking about the lies we tell to survive. How many times had he lied to himself, told himself he was fine, that success made him happy, that he didn't need anyone. He thought about the girls, about how they deserve truth, but also deserve time, and love, and stability. He made a decision. The next morning, while Emily rested, Ethan took the girls out for breakfast. They sat in a tiny diner with red booths and a jukebox that played dusty old rock songs. The girls colored on the menus while Ethan sipped his coffee, gathering the words in his mind. Finally, June looked up. Are you going to be our stepdad? Ethan nearly spilled his drink. What? Lily nodded. We talked about it, and we're okay with it. He chuckled. That's good to know. Do you love Mommy? June asked. He leaned in. Yes, very much. Then are you going to marry her? He paused. Marriage is a big decision. But if I ever did, I'd be lucky. They beamed like they just won the lottery. Can we call you Dad? Lily asked suddenly. Ethan froze. He looked at them, two little girls with sticky hands and wide eyes and hope painted across their faces. I would be honored, he said quietly, but only if your mom says it's okay. They both nodded, satisfied. Then June asked, do we really have a medal? Ethan's heart dropped. What medal? The one Daddy got, Lily said. Mommy said he was brave. Ethan looked at them, then slowly reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his phone. He opened a photo one he kept from a charity award ceremony, where he'd received a medal for funding emergency housing for women and children. He turned the phone toward them. Your mommy said you come from something brave, he said. And she's right. They leaned in, wide-eyed. Whose is that? June asked. It's mine, he said gently. But if you want, I'd like to give it to you. To remind you that being brave doesn't mean fighting. Sometimes it means protecting the people you love. They nodded slowly. And right there, in a booth with cold pancakes and crayons everywhere, Ethan made another promise silently. He would give them a life built on truth. A life where they didn't have to lie to feel safe. When they returned home from the diner, The sun was high and warm against the porch. The twins ran ahead, giggling and holding a paper bag with the mommy written in purple crayon across the front. Ethan walked in slowly behind them, unsure how much to say about their conversation, unsure how much of the truth Emily was ready to confront herself. He found her sitting on the couch with her legs curled up, a blanket draped around her shoulders. She looked tired, but her face lit up when she saw the girls. "Mommy, look!" Lily shouted. June opened the bag dramatically, revealing the medal Ethan had given them. "We got this from Ethan. He says we're brave." Emily's face paled slightly. The girls jumped onto the couch and started explaining their version of the story, how Ethan used to be a knight, how he saved people, and how he once fought a bear to protect a baby. Most of it was nonsense. Glorious, hilarious nonsense. But the medal was real. Ethan met Emily's eye from across the room. No one said anything for a moment. Then she asked, "Girls, can I talk to Ethan alone for a second?" They nodded and ran off to their room, still pretending to fight imaginary bears. Emily sat back. Her voice was low, but sharp. "They asked about their father again, didn't they?" Ethan didn't deny it. "They believe it, Ethan. The story I told them. The soldier. The bravery. The medal. It's all they've ever known." "I know," he said gently, "and I'm not here to ruin that. I just want them to know you are the brave one." She looked down, hands clenched in her lap. "I built the lie to protect them," she said. "But now, they're asking questions I can't keep answering forever. Then maybe it's time to tell a new truth," he said. "One that doesn't erase what you told them, but expands it." Emily's eyes lifted. "What do you mean?" "Tell them their mom is the bravest woman in the world," Ethan said. "Tell them she fought every day to give them a life full of love, that their father couldn't stay, but that love came anyway from you." Her eyes brimmed with tears. "And what about you?" He hesitated, then stepped closer. "Maybe, if you let me, I could be the part of the story that stayed." Emily's voice broke. "You really want to be in this?" He nodded slowly. "I already am." That night, Emily couldn't sleep. Not from pain, but from possibility. She sat at the edge of her bed, watching the girls sleep in the next room through a half-open door, their little hands tucked under their cheeks. The medal now tied to a pink ribbon hanging by the window. The house was silent. But inside her chest, everything was loud. The ache, the fear, the hope. She heard footsteps and turned. Ethan stood there, still in his shirt from the day, hair messy, eyes soft. "I didn't mean to wake you," he whispered. "I wasn't sleeping." He sat beside her. "I keep thinking," she said, "what if the girls one day hate me for lying?" "They won't," he said, "because you didn't lie to protect yourself. You did it to give them something beautiful to believe in. But it wasn't real. It was real to them," Ethan said. "And now, they're strong enough for the truth. Just tell it with love." She nodded slowly, then asked, "What about us?" Ethan took her hand. "I don't know what the next few months will look like. Maybe the treatments help. Maybe they don't. But I'm here. Every step." "I'm scared," she whispered. He pulled her close. "Then let's be scared together." And for once, she let someone hold the weight with her. The next afternoon, while the girls were at school and Emily was resting after another consultation, Ethan drove across town. He pulled into a small mechanic's garage, one of those places with rusted fences and half-disassembled cars in the lot. Inside was a man in his late 40s with a face that had seen too many fights and not enough grace. It was the man from the photo. Ethan had tracked him down through old hospital records and Emily's forgotten mail. He didn't want to fight. He wanted closure. The man looked up, wiping grease off his hands. "Can I help you?" Ethan stepped forward, measured and calm. "You knew Emily Carter 6 years ago." The man paused, eyes narrowing. "Who's asking?" "Someone who cares about her." Deeply, the man leaned on the counter. "She's still alive?" "She's sick, fighting cancer, and still raising your daughters alone." The man snorted. "They ain't my daughters." She left, took everything. She took nothing but 2 children and her dignity. Ethan said, voice sharp but steady, "I'm not here to argue. I'm here to tell you that you've been replaced." The man stood straighter. "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact," Ethan said. They don't know you. They don't need you. But I needed to see you. To understand how someone walks away from what she gave everything to save. There was a long silence. Then the man looked down. She deserved better, he muttered. Always did. Ethan turned to leave. But before he stepped out, he said quietly, she's finally getting better. And this time, she's not alone. That night, Emily sat the girls down on the couch. Ethan sat nearby, watching, silent but steady. Mommy needs to tell you something, she said softly. The twins looked at her curiously. You know how I told you about your dad? She began. They nodded. Well, I told you a story to help you feel brave. But now that you're older, I think you're ready to hear a new story. Their eyes widened. Your dad couldn't stay. He wasn't ready to be a daddy. But I loved you so much that I decided to raise you with all the love I had. Silence. Was he mean? June asked. Emily paused. He didn't know how to love the right way. But that's okay. Because look what we have now. She pulled them close. We have each other. And we have someone else now, too. Both girls turned to Ethan. He smiled. If it's okay with you, I'd like to be part of your story. Not to take anyone's place, but to help write a new chapter. Lily climbed onto his lap. You already are. And in that moment, the lie that once saved them no longer had to. The next morning, Ethan stood alone in his office at the top floor of the Hayes and Locke building, 62 stories above Manhattan. The skyline stretched endlessly around him, glass and steel catching the sunrise. His empire. But all he could think about was a woman in a small suburban home, and two girls who had drawn him into their story like he belonged there all along. Behind him, his assistant Marianne stood quietly, holding a tablet and a concerned expression. Mr. Hayes, the press has been asking questions. You've canceled 3 international conferences, skipped investor meetings, and the board want a statement. Put everything on hold, Ethan said without turning around. Everything? Yes. Marianne blinked. That could cost. I know exactly what it could cost. He interrupted. But I know what it'll cost me if I don't. She hesitated. Is this personal? He finally turned to face her. It's the most personal thing I've ever done. She gave a slow nod, her voice softer now. Then I'll reschedule. Quietly. Thank you, he said. When she left, Ethan walked to his desk. There, he pulled out a folder labeled Carter Plan. Inside was everything. Medical reports, treatment plans, private clinic contacts, nutrition guides, psychologist recommendations for children of terminal parents, even backup options if she refused certain procedures. He'd assembled a dream team, an oncologist from Boston, a caregiver specialist from Switzerland, and a research trial lead in California. Money wasn't the issue. Time was. And time was running out. Back at the house, Emily was standing by the kitchen sink when Ethan returned later that afternoon. She turned to him, smiling. You're late. I brought something, he said, holding up a manila envelope. She raised an eyebrow. If that's another doctor's recommendation. It's not, he interrupted gently. It's something else. He handed it to her. Inside was a printed letter with a header. Sunset Foundation grant approval, followed by recipient as Emily Carter. She frowned. What's this? It's a non-profit grant fully anonymous for single mothers battling terminal illness. It covers full medical expenses, travel, housing, child support, and caregiver services. For 5 years. Her eyes scanned it, her hands trembling. Ethan, there's no red tape, no fine print, no expectations. She stared at him. You created this. She whispered. He nodded. In your name. Quietly. No media. No headlines. Just help. Tears filled her eyes. Why would you do this? Ethan stepped closer. Because I made a promise. When we were kids, remember? I said if I ever got rich, I'd buy you a castle. You were 12. She whispered through a smile. Well, he said, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. This isn't a castle, but it's a kingdom of choices. Of time. Of peace. Emily's tears fell freely now. No one has ever done anything like this for me. He took her hand. Then let me be the first. Because you saved me once, Emily. And I never forgot. That evening, after dinner, Ethan sat with the girls on a living room rug, helping them build a castle out of cereal boxes and tape. Emily watched from the couch, wrapped in her blanket, a soft glow on her face. She looked worn but lighter somehow, like a burden had shifted off her shoulders. At one point, June asked, "Can castles have hospitals?" Ethan smiled. "Yes, but only the kind that make people better really fast." "Like Mommy?" Lily added. He nodded. "Exactly." They worked in silence for a while. Then Lily crawled into his lap and whispered, "Will you stay forever?" He looked up at Emily. Her eyes met his, and for the first time, she didn't look afraid. "If you want me to," he whispered back. Lily nodded and hugged him tightly. And Ethan knew this was the beginning of the most important legacy he would ever leave. The next day began early. Too early. Emily sat on the exam table at the private clinic Ethan had arranged. It wasn't the cold, sterile place she was used to. It felt more like a peaceful spa crossed with a library. Calming colors, quiet music, and kind voices. But she still hated it. She hated the needles, the tests, the scans, the quiet stares doctors gave each other when they thought she wasn't looking. She hated the way her body betrayed her with fatigue, nausea, and weight loss. She hated most how her daughters looked at her now like she might break if they hugged her too tightly. Ethan sat beside her, holding her hand the entire time. "You don't have to wait," she murmured, eyes closed as another nurse drew blood. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. When the nurse left, Emily opened her eyes and looked at him. "Don't you have a company to run?" "Right now," he replied, "I'm running a life." She let her head fall softly against his shoulder. For once, she let herself rest. That afternoon, Ethan took her somewhere unexpected. He didn't tell her where until they pulled up. It was a single-story brick building with a mural painted across the front. Kids flying kites, a woman with a crown, the word written hope in big, looping letters. Emily stepped out of the car slowly, confused. "What is this?" Ethan handed her a clipboard. "Read the name." She looked down. The Emily Carter Family Center. Her knees nearly buckled. What is this?" "It's a shelter," Ethan said, "for women like you. Moms who had nowhere to go will have therapy, housing support, school partnerships. And this time, it's named after the woman who taught me what surviving really looks like." Emily stood frozen, blinking fast. "I don't deserve this," she whispered. "You built this," he said. "You did," she replied. "No," Ethan said gently. "I just wrote checks. You lived it. Every night you held your babies and cried into your pillow. Every shift you worked while sick. Every story you invented just to keep them smiling. That's the blueprint. I just turned it into brick and mortar." She reached for him and buried her face into his chest. "What if I die before it opens?" "Then your story lives in every woman who walks through that door," he whispered. They stood there for a long time. And for the first time since her diagnosis, Emily didn't feel like she was dying. She felt like she was beginning. Back at the house, the girls were in the backyard with a neighbor's daughter, running in circles with butterfly nets and making up songs. Emily watched them through the window, her tea warm in her hands. Ethan stood behind her. "They seem happy," she said. "They are," he replied, "because they have you." Emily turned. "And now they have you too." He didn't speak for a moment. Then he said, "I want to talk to you about something." "Okay." "It's not a proposal," he clarified quickly. "Not yet, but I want to discuss legal guardianship. If something happens." "You want custody?" "No," he interrupted. "I want security. For them. For you. If something happens, I want it to be easy. No courts. No questions. Just love. I want to be the one who tucks them in, takes them to school, picks them up when they fall." Emily stared at him, her eyes searching his. "I'm not asking to replace anyone," he continued. "I'm asking to step in the way someone should have years ago." Her lips trembled. "You do that?" In a heartbeat, she stepped forward and put her forehead against his chest. "Then, let's start the paperwork." 2 weeks passed. Emily began treatments. Some days were brutal. She couldn't hold food down, couldn't lift her arms, couldn't stop shaking. But on those days, Ethan stayed home. He read books to the girls, played quiet board games, and held Emily through every cry and cramp and moment of fear. He made her smoothies with names like Sunshine Warrior and Berry Brave, and when her hair began to fall out, he shaved his head in solidarity. The girls thought it was hilarious. Emily cried harder than she ever had, but only for a moment, because for once, she wasn't crying alone. One evening, after the girls had gone to bed, Ethan sat beside Emily in the living room. She wore a knit cap, her body thin and tired, but her eyes were strong. "I've been thinking about your legacy," he said. "My what?" She smiled. "Your impact. You're changing lives now. Not later. Now. I'm barely holding mine together." "Exactly," he said. "And still you're changing mine." She leaned against him, whispering, "Then don't ever leave. I promise." And it wasn't just a figure of speech. It was his $1 billion promise. Not made in press releases or Forbes interviews, but in whispered prayers, in midnight tears, in quiet rooms filled with love and lavender. It happened on a Wednesday. Emily had just returned from another brutal chemo session. She insisted she was fine, walked herself into the house, kissed the girls on their heads, and even managed a soft smile as she sipped warm soup Ethan made. But around midnight, she collapsed in the bathroom. Ethan found her on the cold tiles, unconscious, her lips pale, her breathing shallow. He called 911 while the girls stood in the hallway crying, barefoot and afraid. At the hospital, everything moved fast. Monitors beeped. Doctors murmured. A nurse pulled Ethan aside and told him her blood pressure had dropped dangerously low. "She's dehydrated. Her body's not responding well to the latest round. Is she gonna make it?" he asked, voice low, steady only because it had to be. "She's a fighter," the nurse replied. "But right now she's in crisis." Ethan sat alone in the waiting room for nearly 2 hours. His phone buzzed over and over. Emails, missed calls, headlines speculating about his company's absence from a tech summit in Dubai. He didn't care. None of it mattered. All that mattered was whether the woman who turned his world upside down would open her eyes again. Emily woke in the intensive care unit with a mask over her mouth and an M4 in her hand. Ethan was asleep in the chair beside her, slumped awkwardly but holding her hand like it anchored him to the earth. She watched him silently for a moment, breathing in slow, painful breaths, until his eyes blinked open. He sat up instantly. Hey, you're awake." She nodded slightly, unable to speak yet. His face was pale. Eyes tired. Shirt wrinkled from hours in the same clothes. "You scared me," he whispered. Her voice was weak. "Sorry." "No," he said firmly. "You never have to apologize for fighting." She tried to smile. He leaned forward. "The doctors say you'll pull through. But only if we stop pushing like this. No more skipping fluids. No more pretending you're stronger than you are." She blinked, tears building. "I need you," he said. "Not perfect, not strong. Just here." A tear slid down her cheek. "I'm so tired," she whispered. "I know. I don't want the girls to watch me disappear." "They won't," he said, voice thick, "because I'll be here. Every step." He reached into his coat and pulled something out, a velvet box. She gasped softly. "Ethan, it's not a proposal," he said gently. "Not yet. But this ring, it belonged to my mother. She wore it when she rebuilt her life after my father left. I want you to have it. Not because you're leaving, but because you're staying." She touched the ring, shaking. "I can't promise forever," she said. "Not with this body." He lifted her hand and kissed her knuckles. "Then promise me now that you'll keep fighting, that you'll take every day like it's a gift." "I promise," she whispered. "And I promise this," he said. "As long as you breathe, you'll never do it alone." The next morning, the twins arrived with their aunt, dressed in bright colors, carrying Get Well card with glitter and crooked hearts. Emily sat up in bed, ring on her finger, pale but smiling. "Mommy, are you okay now?" Lily asked. She nodded. "I am now." June climbed into bed with her. "Can we go to the lake again when you get better?" "Yes," Emily said. "And next time, I'm swimming too." Ethan stood nearby, watching them. Something inside him shifted. For years, He'd chase power, control, status. But standing in that hospital room, watching a woman hold her children like breath itself, he realized this was the empire he wanted to build, a life worth waking up for. That night, after Emily fell asleep again, Ethan stepped outside for air. His phone buzzed, another board member calling. He finally answered. "Ethan, you can't keep disappearing like this," the voice barked. "We're losing market trust. Investors are worried." "I'm stepping back," Ethan said. There was silence on the other end. "Excuse me? I'm appointing a new interim CEO. I'll still advise, but I'm needed elsewhere." "Where exactly?" Ethan looked up at the stars. "With my family." The call ended with confusion. But for the first time in his career, Ethan didn't feel the need to explain. He walked back inside, kissed the sleeping girls on their foreheads, sat beside Emily, and whispered, "This is my billion-dollar promise. Not in gold, not in power, but in presence." The rain tapped gently against the window. Emily sat alone at the small desk in the corner of the bedroom, wrapped in a shawl, a cup of lukewarm tea beside her. The world was still asleep. Not even the birds had begun to sing. She hadn't told anyone she was awake. Not Ethan, who had fallen asleep beside the twins in the living room after watching some silly cartoon. Not the girls, whose soft breathing down the hallway filled her with comfort and grief at once. On the desk sat a shoebox. Not a new one. It was slightly dented, its corners soft from time. Inside, she began placing sealed envelopes. One by one, all marked with simple labels. To Lily, on your 10th birthday. To June, when you have your first heartbreak. To both of you, the day you graduate. To my girls, if I'm not there on your wedding day. To Ethan, her hand trembled as she reached for a fresh sheet of paper. She had begun writing these letters ever since her diagnosis reached stage 4. Back then, she thought she'd never live past the next season. Now, with Ethan's help, she'd made it months further than anyone expected. But that didn't mean she stopped preparing. Because the one thing cancer had taught her was that hope and honesty had to live together. And if she couldn't give her daughters a future, then she'd give them words. To my Lily and June, if you are reading this, and I'm not that hold your hands or fix your hair or kiss your cheeks good morning, then I need you to know something. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. Before you, I didn't know if I was strong. I didn't know if I could survive. But the first time I heard your cries, I made a silent promise that no matter how scared I was, I would fight for you. I hope you grow up knowing you were never unwanted. You were never abandoned. You were miracles wrapped in blankets I couldn't afford. Love with a love I never had for myself. If I'm not there on the hard days, remember this. I am always, always in your story. You came from my body, my soul, my tears, and my laughter. You are not alone. Not now. Not ever. Not with Ethan. Love from Mommy. She folded the letter slowly and slipped into a pale pink envelope. On it, she wrote, "To my daughters, open when you miss me most." The door creaked softly behind her. She turned. Ethan stood there in sweatpants and a hoodie, eyes heavy with sleep, but face alert. "I didn't mean to wake you," she said quickly, sliding the envelope into the box. He walked in slowly and sat on the edge of the bed. "Were you writing?" he asked. She nodded. "It helps to feel like I'm still part of their future, even if I'm not physically there." Ethan reached out and took her hand. "You will be here." Emily smiled. "But in case I'm not, I want to leave them pieces of me they can hold." He looked at the box. So many letters. One for every year until they turned 21. He swallowed. "You've thought of everything." She looked at him. "Except how to say goodbye to you." He squeezed her hand. "Then don't. I might have to." "Not now," he whispered. They sat in silence. And then he asked, "Can I read one? One that's meant for me?" She hesitated, then nodded, opening the box again. She pulled out a pale blue envelope marked, "To Ethan." He opened it with care. Inside was a single page, written in her smallest, neatest script. "Ethan, I don't know if you'll read this after I'm gone or while I'm still fighting, But if you're holding this letter, it means I trusted you enough to love me all the way through. Thank you for coming back, for finding me, for loving the parts of me I thought I had to bury. You were the first boy who ever looked at me like I mattered. And now, you're the man who made me feel safe enough to fall asleep again without fear. If I don't make it, I need you to know that my last breath will be filled with gratitude, not pain. Gratitude for every moment you gave me, for every meal, every silly dance with the girls, every kiss on my forehead when I thought I was ugly. And if you ever doubt yourself, don't. You saved me. In this life, that is no small thing. Love from Emily. He folded the letter slowly, pressing it to his chest. I'm not letting go, he whispered. I know, she said, but if I ever have to, he continued, voice breaking, I'll do it carrying everything you gave me. The next morning, Emily awoke to the smell of something baking. She sat up slowly, her body still sore from the hospital scare a few days ago. But the scent, cinnamon, and vanilla stirred something warm inside her. Ethan was in the kitchen with the girls. Lily was wearing a chef's hat 2 sizes too big, and June had flowers streaked across her nose. They were focused, stirring bowls and shouting measurements. Emily stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching quietly. She's up, June squealed. Seeing her, Lily rushed over, tugging her hand. Mommy, we made memory muffins. Emily laughed, confused. Memory muffins? Ethan turned, holding a tray. They each picked one favorite memory with you and baked it into a muffin. That's not how baking works, Emily teased. It is in this house, he replied. Lily handed her a muffin with a tiny pink heart on top. This one is from the time you let us wear pajamas to the grocery store and said we were superheroes undercover. Emily took the muffin slowly, biting back tears. June handed over hers. This one is for when you sang to me all night when I was sick, even though your voice cracked. Emily couldn't speak. Ethan handed her a cup of warm tea. We thought we'd start baking the stories now, before the letters are needed. She stared at him, her heart full and aching. They're already learning how to remember you while you're still here. Later that day, while the girls played with building blocks in the living room, Emily sat at the dining table with Ethan and a social worker named Karen. They went over paperwork, guardianship, health directives, trust funds, education plans. It was heavy, but necessary. Emily signed each paper with a steady hand. You okay? Ethan asked quietly. I thought I'd feel like I was surrendering, she said. But it feels like I'm finally giving them wings. Karen nodded, sliding the final form across the table. One more signature. Emily paused, pen in hand. This document, it gives Ethan full parental rights? Yes. Only in the event of your passing, Karen said gently. You can revoke it any time. Emily looked at Ethan. He didn't say anything. He just waited. That's what she loved most about him now. He didn't pressure. He didn't push. He just stayed. She signed. That night, Emily sat with the twins in bed, holding a storybook in her lap. But they weren't interested in the words on the page tonight. Mommy? Lily whispered. Will you be here for my next birthday? Emily's throat tightened. She nodded slowly. That's the plan. And the one after that? June asked. Emily looked down. I don't know, she said honestly. But if I'm not, I wrote you something. She opened a small box and handed each girl a sealed envelope with their names. Lily hugged hers tightly. Should we open it now? No, Emily said. Only when you miss me the most. Okay, June whispered. They lay beside her for a long time, quiet and thoughtful. Eventually, they drifted off to sleep, still clutching the letters in their hands. In the living room, Ethan sat with his laptop. He was finalizing the opening dates for the Emily Carter Family Center. Construction was ahead of schedule, and donors had begun pouring in, most anonymous, all moved by her story. He glanced toward the hallway and saw her approaching. You okay? He asked. She nodded. They're asleep. She sat beside him on the couch, then said, I feel different. How? I'm not scared of dying anymore, she whispered. I'm scared of leaving things unfinished. You won't, he said. I might. He closed the laptop and faced her fully. Then tell me what you need finished. She looked him dead in the eyes. I want them to remember joy, not just sickness, not just tears, but the sound of my laugh, the smell of my cooking, the way I danced badly to 80s music. Ethan stood suddenly and walked to the shelf. He pulled out a speaker, opened a playlist on his phone, and hit play. A funky, old pop beat filled the room. Emily blinked. What are you doing? Creating a memory. He held out his hand. Dance with me. She hesitated, then stood slowly, her limbs weak, but her heart racing. He pulled her close, and they began to sway. Her laugh ray all warm, free filled the room, and from the hallway, two little faces peeked around the corner, giggling. I think we should join, June whispered, and they did. All four of them, dancing in a living room at midnight. No cameras, no headlines, just joy. After the girls were tucked back in and the music faded, Emily sat beside Ethan on the porch. The night air was cool, the stars bright. She looked up. Do you think they'll remember this? He smiled. They'll never forget. She leaned into him and whispered, then my work here is almost done. The next morning, Emily woke up to birdsong. Not the harsh kind that yanked her from sleep, but the kind that sounded like possibility. The kind that reminded her that, yes, she was still here. She sat up and reached for the journal beside her bed. Not the letterbox, not the legal papers, just her quiet space, her own space. She didn't write about fear. She wrote about hope. Today I danced. I saw my daughters laugh until their sides hurt. I saw Ethan spin them around in a way that made me believe in fathers again. I smelled cinnamon. I tasted light. I lived. She closed the book. The sun poured to the window in warm streams. Dust floated in the light, gentle and slow. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she was dying. She felt like she was returning. Later that day, Emily asked Ethan to drive her somewhere. Not a clinic, not a meeting, but a tree. The tree. It stood in the corner of their old neighborhood, tall and half-withered now, with a deep scar along its trunk, the initials E+E, carved when they were just 15. Ethan parked the car and followed her out. You remember this spot? I never forgot it. They stood under the old oak, the breeze lifting the loose curls from her face. This is where you first told me you wanted to marry a girl who wore sneakers and laughed too loud, she said, smiling. He chuckled. And you said you'd only marry someone who let you finish all the fries. She nodded. I still mean that. They stood there, letting the silence settle between them. Then she said, this might be my last chapter. I don't know how long I have left. Weeks, maybe a few months. But I don't want to be remembered as the woman who got sick. Ethan looked at her. You won't. I want to be remembered as a mother, a friend, a stubborn woman who refused to be small, who loved so loudly it echoed. You will be. She turned to him. Then when the time comes, don't let the girls drown in sadness. Let them cry, but then let them build. Let them write stories. Let them dance. I promise, he said, his voice raw. But you're not done yet, Emily. You're not done until you say so. She smiled. I say I have more time. That night, Emily read one final letter. Not to write it, to live it. She had written it for her daughters for the day they fell in love. And now, she realized she was still the girl in that letter too. To my girls, the day you fall in love, choose someone who doesn't just open doors but waits when you're too tired to walk through. Choose someone who doesn't run from your scars but kisses them like maps leading home. Choose someone who won't fix you but will fight beside you. And if you ever wonder what love should feel like, remember how your mother looked at you every single day. That is love, and it's yours forever. She placed the letter back into the box and locked it with a ribbon. When she turned around, Ethan was watching her from the doorway. She walked over and placed her arms around him and whispered, I'm not done loving you either. No one said it aloud. Not the nurses, not the oncologist, not Ethan, but something had changed. Emily could feel it in her bones, in her blood, in the way she woke up before the alarm instead of after a coughing fit, in how her appetite crept back, quietly, like a guest who didn't want to startle anyone. She still had cancer, But the cancer no longer had her. That afternoon, during her weekly visit to Dr. Lin, a world-renowned specialist, Ethan, had flown in from Boston. She sat upright, alert, answering every question before the doctor could even glance at her chart. Dr. Lin raised an eyebrow. "Emily," he said cautiously, "how have your symptoms been this week?" "I haven't thrown up in 5 days," she said. "No nosebleeds. The headaches are almost gone." Dr. Lin tapped his pen, then pulled up her latest blood work on the screen. "Your counts are stabilizing," he murmured, "slightly, but definitely better than expected." Emily looked at Ethan. He didn't say anything, but his eyes spoke volumes. After the doctor left the room, Ethan pulled out his phone. "I want to call the girls." Emily reached over and stopped him. "Not yet," she said, a small smile forming. "Let's be sure." He nodded slowly, but inside, something fluttered, a heartbeat of hope. That evening, Emily didn't go straight to bed. She baked. Nothing fancy, just banana bread. But it had been months since the oven was used for anything other than frozen waffles. The smell filled the house like a memory that didn't hurt anymore. Lily ran into the kitchen and gasped. "Mommy, you're standing up for so long." "I know," Emily said, smiling. "I forgot how good this smells." June sniffed the air dramatically. "Is this a special day?" Emily knelt carefully and said, "It might be." Ethan watched from the hallway, quietly, phone in hand. He had a message from Dr. Lin on screen. "Still early, but signs are promising. Continuing current protocol." He tucked the phone away and walked in. "What are we celebrating?" he asked. Emily turned to him, eyes glowing with something he hadn't seen in weeks. Color. Life. After dinner, the family gathered in the living room. The girls took turns showing off their shows, short skits they made up using scarves, dolls, and far too many knock-knock jokes. Emily laughed so hard at one point that she had to hold her stomach. Okay, that's enough for tonight. Mommy needs a commercial break." June pointed at Ethan. "Now you do one." He froze. "Me?" Lily nodded. "You're part of the family now. Everyone performs." He stood up slowly, scratching his head. "Okay, but I'll need a volunteer." Emily rolled her eyes and joined him in front of their makeshift stage. He cleared his throat and said dramatically, "And now, the tragic tale of the lady who stole my heart." The girls gasped. Emily burst out laughing. He twirled her gently, slow, careful of her still weak body, but filled with grace. They swayed for a moment as the girls clapped and shouted encore. Emily leaned close and whispered, "I think they're falling in love with you." "I'm already theirs," he whispered back. Later, after the girls had gone to bed, Emily and Ethan sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, hands entwined. The stars were out. The air smelled like banana bread and early autumn. "I don't want to hope too hard," Emily said softly. "You can," he replied. "Hope isn't a risk. It's a gift." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "What if this doesn't last?" "Then we keep fighting," he said. "But if it does last?" She looked up. "Then we take that second chance and build a life we never got the first time." She smiled, tears in her eyes. "I want that." He kissed her forehead. "It's already starting." Saturday morning came with sunlight. Real sunlight. The kind that spilled to the curtains and touched every corner of the house like a gentle kiss. Emily opened her eyes slowly and realized she had slept through the entire night. No pain. No nausea. No terror at 3 a.m. Just peace. She sat up slowly, expecting the usual dizziness. But it didn't come. Instead, she felt light, not cured, but stronger, whole in a way she hadn't in months. From the hallway, she heard laughter. Ethan and the girls. She followed the sound, walking barefoot to the kitchen, and what she saw nearly made her cry. Ethan had tied a dish towel around his neck like a superhero cape. June was riding on his back like a knight. Lily was directing traffic with a spatula. The counter was covered in pancake batter and syrup. The scene was ridiculous. It was also perfect. They stopped when they saw her. "You're awake?" June shouted. Mommy Lily ran to hug her. "We're making pancake monsters." Emily laughed. "I can see that." Ethan walked over and kissed her cheek. "How do you feel?" She paused, and then said it clearly. "I feel like living again." They decided to make it a day out. It had been months since they'd gone anywhere that didn't involve hospital walls or waiting rooms. So they dressed up. Emily wore her favorite long blue dress, the one she had hidden at the back of the closet for some day. Lily wore a tiara. June wore a cape. And Ethan? He wore his sneakers, jeans, and the biggest smile Emily had ever seen on him. They went to the zoo. It wasn't fancy, just a local place with tired monkeys and cheerful volunteers, but to the girls, it was a wonderland. They laughed at the flamingos, fed goats, and convinced Ethan to ride the carousel 3 times in a row. Emily watched them from a bench, hand pressed to her heart. She wasn't just watching her daughters play. She was watching her family. They stopped at a diner on the way home, ordered milkshakes, burgers, fries. The girls took turns telling the waitress their animal facts from the zoo. Ethan watched Emily. She was glowing. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly across the table. "I'm more than okay," she said. "I feel like myself again." "I missed her," he said. Emily smiled. "Me too." That night, after the girls had gone to sleep, Ethan and Emily sat on the porch once more. No words, just her head on his chest, the stars above them. And for once, the future didn't feel like something they had to fear. It felt like something they could build. "I was afraid to hope," Emily said softly, "because what if it didn't last?" "It doesn't have to last forever," Ethan said. "It just has to be real." "And this?" she asked. He looked down at her. "This is the realest thing I've ever known." She turned and pressed her forehead to his. "I'm not afraid anymore." He held her closer. "You never had to be." A week later, Emily returned to the clinic for another scan. She wasn't nervous. Not because she expected a miracle, but because she finally felt strong enough to face whatever came. This time, she wasn't walking alone. Ethan sat beside her, holding her hand, his thumb brushing the back of her fingers rhythmically. Dr. Lin entered with a subtle smile. "I have good news," he said. Emily sat up straighter. "The tumors have reduced by almost 30% since your last scan. Your immune response is strong, and your vitals are stabilizing in ways we honestly didn't predict." Ethan exhaled slowly. Emily blinked. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying," Dr. Lin interrupted gently, "you're responding. And if this trend continues, we may not be talking about how much time you have. We may be talking about what comes next." She sat frozen. Ethan stood and hugged her, hard. When they got home that night, the girls were in the backyard with fairy lights wrapped around tiny tents Ethan had helped them build. It was their idea, a thank you universe camping party. They didn't know the full story yet, but they knew their mother was feeling better, and that was all that mattered. Emily sat by the fire pit, while the girls danced to music only they could hear. She didn't cry. Not this time. She just smiled, her chest full, her mind clear, her heart beating steady and hopeful. Ethan wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and sat beside her. "Do you think this will last?" she asked. "I think it already is." She looked up at the stars. "They say the body remembers pain," she whispered. "But I hope mine learns to remember joy, too." "It will," he said, "because we'll keep reminding it." That weekend, Ethan drove them back to the cabin by the lake. It looked the same, but everything felt different. This time, Emily didn't need help walking down to the water. She went on her own, barefoot, skirt brushing the earth, curls loose in the wind. The girls ran ahead, building rock castles and chasing dragonflies. Ethan watched her from the porch. She turned back and smiled. It wasn't just a smile of survival. It was a smile of a woman who believed again. That evening, after dinner and dancing under string lights, Emily pulled out a box. Not the letterbox. A new one. Inside were envelopes, but this time they were addressed to others. To the nurse who stayed an extra hour when I was too scared to sleep. To the woman in the next chair over, still fighting her own battle. To the stranger who sent flowers without a name. To the man who loved me back to life. She handed that last one to Ethan. He didn't open it. He didn't need to. He kissed her, and the fire crackled beside them, like applause from the stars. The next morning, Emily stood on the deck in her robe, sipping tea, eyes closed, soaking in the rising sun. Ethan joined her. "You okay?" he asked. She turned to him. "I'm not healed yet, but I'm healing." He nodded. "You know what Dr. Lin said at the end?" "What?" He said, "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." She looked at him. "I think he meant you." Ethan laughed softly. "Then I'm never leaving." "Good," she said, reaching for his hand, "because I'm just getting started." The storm passed during the night, not a metaphorical one, a real one. Wind had howled across the trees. Rain slammed against the windows. Thunder rolled like 1,000 drums. But by morning, the sky stretched open in soft, golden silence. Emily stood barefoot in the doorway of the lake cabin, watching the sun break through the mist. The grass glistened. The air was thick with the scent of earth and clean water. She didn't flinch at the memory of storms anymore, because this time she was still standing after the rain. Behind her, she heard footsteps. Ethan. He slid his arm gently around her waist and kissed the side of her head. "You were up early. I wanted to see it," she said softly. "The light after everything." He nodded. "I still remember lying in that hospital bed, wondering if I'd ever make it back here," she whispered. "Wondering if I'd ever feel this to live again." "You can just make it," Ethan said. "You brought all of us through." They stood in silence, the breeze playing with the hem of her robe, the lake still and silver below. Emily turned to him. "I think I'm ready." "For what?" he asked. She smiled. "For whatever comes next." Later that morning, back in the city, they returned to something she had long avoided. Normal life. Not the survival-based schedule of treatments and pain management, but real, structured days. School drop-offs, grocery lists, opening curtains and letting light in on purpose. Emily was still in remission. Dr. Lin cautioned them not to throw the word cured around too easily. But even he admitted this was no longer a countdown. This was a rebuilding. Ethan returned to the office once a week only because Emily made him. "You're still CEO," she reminded him. "The world doesn't stop because I'm better. But I want to be here." He'd argue. "You already are," she'd smile. "Now go be amazing out there too." The girls were thriving. June was writing stories about brave moms who beat dragons. Lily had decided she wanted to become a doctor, but only if I get to work with pretty moms who wear robes and drink tea. Every day was still a gift, but now it wasn't wrapped in fear. It was wrapped in gratitude. One crisp Saturday, Emily brought the letter box out of her closet. She gathered the girls in the living room, where sunlight spilled across the floor like melted honey. They sat cross-legged on the rug. "I have something to show you," she said. June gasped. "Is it more muffins?" Lily whispered. "Or puppies?" Emily laughed. "No, silly. It's more powerful than both." She placed the box in front of them and opened the lid. Inside were the letters. Unopened. All of them. "I wrote these for you," she said, "when I didn't know if I'd still be here." The girls grew quiet. "But now, I am here. So I want to give them to you anyway. Not because I'm leaving, but because even if I stay forever, I want you to have my words when you need them most." Lily picked up the one labeled to my daughters, "When you feel alone." June took the one marked to my girls, "If I miss your graduation." "Can we read them?" They asked. "Not yet," Emily said gently. "Save them. For a time when my voice might help more than my presence." They hugged her tightly, and she held them like the future was certain, even if it wasn't. That night, Ethan found her alone on the porch again. "I keep thinking about what to do next," she said. "What do you mean?" "I spent so long fighting. I forgot what I wanted when I wasn't afraid." Ethan sat beside her. "So what do you want now?" She looked out at the quiet sky. "I want to help other women, like me, who gave birth in fear, who got sick alone, who feel invisible." "You're already doing that," he said. "The center is opening next week." She nodded. "But I want to be more than a name on the wall. I want to sit with them, talk to them, listen. Then we'll build that too," Ethan said. "Whatever you dream, we build." She smiled. "You know," she said softly, "before all this, I used to wonder if love was a luxury, Something only other people got to keep. Now I know it's a medicine that saved me. He took her hand. And it's the reason I'm the man I always hoped I could be. The Emily Carter Family Center opened on a quiet Tuesday morning. No ribbon-cutting fanfare. No press. Just life. Emily walked through the front doors wearing a simple yellow dress. The same color she used to draw sunrises for her daughters when she was too weak to stand. Now, she walked on her own, shoulders back, head high. Ethan stood beside her, hand on the small of her back. He didn't lead. He didn't follow. He walked with her. Inside the center, a dozen women waited in the community room, each one with a child beside her. Some had tear-streaked cheeks. Others had sharp, guarded eyes. Emily didn't give a speech. She sat, in a circle, among them, equal. She began, I don't know all of your stories, but I know what it's like to choose between medicine and groceries. I know what it's like to hide how tired you are, because you don't want your kids to feel the fear. Silence. One woman nodded slowly, tears sliding down her face. Another whispered, me too. And just like that, a community formed not out of pity, but out of power. Emily didn't need a podium. She was the message. After the meeting, she found Ethan standing by the wall of framed mission statements. He smiled. They love you already. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I just want them to know they're not broken. They'll know, he said, because they saw someone who stood back up. She turned and faced him fully. I want to do something bold, she said suddenly. He grinned. How bold? Bolder than letters. Bolder than banana bread. I'm listening. She took a deep breath. I want to marry you. Ethan blinked. You do? She laughed. Didn't see that coming, did you? He took her hand slowly, reverently. I would have waited forever, he said, but I'll take tomorrow. They got married by the lake. The same cabin. Same tree. Different chapter. The girls walked ahead as flower girls, tossing wildflowers into the wind like confetti. Emily wore a simple white dress. No veil, just a small gold comb in her curls. Ethan wore a soft gray suit, no tie, and the same shoes he wore the day he found her again. They said their vows quietly, not for show, for each other. I found you once, Ethan said, and now I choose you again every day, every moment for the rest of our lives. Emily's voice trembled as she answered. I thought I'd run out of time, but you gave me more than time. You gave me a life. I don't just love you. I believe in you. They kissed as the girls clapped and the wind whispered through the trees. That night, Emily sat beside the water. The girls were asleep. Ethan sat behind her, arms wrapped around her waist. Are you happy? He asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she pointed to the sky. See that star? He nodded. That's the one I used to wish on. Every night, I'd whisper, let them remember me with love. Not sadness, not illness, just love. He kissed her shoulder. And now, I don't need to wish anymore. Months passed. Seasons changed. Hair grew back. Laughter deepened. The letters stayed sealed. But the stories continued. And every now and then, someone new would walk to the doors of the Emily Carter Center, broken and afraid, and meet a woman who had once faced death and chose instead to live. Years passed. Not all at once. Just slowly, like the way morning becomes afternoon, without anyone noticing. The house changed. Toys disappeared. Shoes got bigger. The drawings on the fridge were replaced with graduation photos. But one thing never moved. The box of letters. It sat on a shelf in Emily's study, untouched, ribbon still tied, because she was still here, still dancing to terrible music, still drinking too much tea, still laughing at jokes that didn't make sense, still making pancakes with personality. One afternoon, Lily, now 16, walked into the study. Mom? She said. Emily looked up from her book. Can I open one? Emily smiled. You could, but I don't need to, Lily said, because I get the real thing every day. Emily reached out and pulled her daughter into a hug. Then keep them closed, she whispered, but know they're always there. Outside, Ethan stood by the tree, the one from the beginning, where it all started. He watched as June raced across the yard, camera in hand, calling out, "Dad, look, I got the shot of the sun breaking through." He smiled because he remembered the storm. And now, he lived in the light after it. Thank you so much for watching. We truly appreciate your time and support. If you enjoyed the video, please give a thumbs up and don't forget to leave a meaningful comment below. Let us know your thoughts and tell us where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. It means a lot to us to hear from you. If you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more amazing content like this. And to all our returning subscribers, thank you for your continued support. We couldn't do this without you. Stay tuned for more exciting videos coming your way, and we'll see you in the next one.